I left the UK for Australia at the age of 21, and here is what I learned. Hello guys, and welcome back to another video. So as you guys know, I moved from the UK to Australia when I was 21 years old. It's now 3 years later and I did 2 years in Australia, and it was the best experience ever. For anyone thinking of moving to Australia, I highly recommend it. It's my favourite country that I've ever lived in. But naturally, with any move, any big jump in your life, like for me, moving to Australia from the UK was the biggest leap, biggest jump I've ever made in my whole life. And I learned some very interesting things when I moved, and so will you guys if you do the same thing. But today I'm going to cover some of the major things that I learned when I moved abroad. You guys might be able to relate to it if you've moved abroad yourself, or if you're planning to move, then you might kind of know what to expect. But I'm going to talk from my experience. So the first thing I learned moving from the UK and living in a country like Australia is it became very clear quite quickly the difference in cultures, particularly towards people who are doing well, people who have ambitions, and people who have big goals and are doing well and doing something good with their life. In Australia, people were very supportive. I used to tell them about my traveling. People were like, that's so cool you're doing all that. You know, I'd speak to people about my future goals and the things I want to do. And I feel like there's a big culture in Australia for like, I know Americans are known for having a culture of like, oh, go on man, you know, you go for it man. Do you know what I mean? Like proper hyping everyone up who does well. In Australia, it is like that as well. There's not like a hate culture. People are very supportive of what you're doing and nice about it. However, in the UK, there's a massive culture to hate on anyone that's doing well, to hide your kind of ambitions. You know, if your ambitions are too high or you're too confident in yourself, it's looked upon as a bad thing. If you've got an ego, it's looked at as a bad thing. You know, you're meant to just kind of stay below the line in the UK, not really have big goals, just stick to your job, not say too much. And if you step out of that, you're looked at as the odd one out, and it's stupid, but it's almost like frowned upon to have big ambitions and big goals, which is mental. But it's such a culture in the UK. And the reason I'm mentioning it in this video is because I learned that more when I moved. When you're in the culture of the UK and you've only ever lived in the UK your whole life, you don't know any different. So to me it was just normal. But moving abroad, maybe it was being surrounded by other travelers and stuff, but also people in Australia, it became clear to me how bad that culture is in the UK. Even when I'd mentioned traveling to people in the UK, they're just not really interested, or they're just like, oh, you know, why are you doing that? Don't you want to work? Don't you want to save? You're gonna, you know what I mean? It's like, it's always a negative spin. Do you know what I mean? If I went back to the UK now and told them about, I want to do social media and grow on YouTube, they're like, oh, you don't want to get a real job or something. Like, that's the culture in the UK. And it became very clear to me when I moved abroad that it's such a negative culture for anyone that does well. And you almost, you're brought up and learned to suppress your ego. To, you know, if you've got too much of an ego, that's a bad thing. But I don't think it is. Obviously, like, if you've got a ridiculous ego, then that's a bit annoying, especially if you're just like job pisses me off is when you get like a manager in a job, like literally like a store manager or something, but they've got the biggest ego. It's like, why? You've still got 3 people above you telling you what to do. Yeah, I'm going off on one there, but that's what I'm kind of talking about. If you've got an ego like that, that's not good. If you've got an ego where it's like, I know what I'm doing, you know, I'm moving abroad, I'm confident in myself, like, that's frowned upon in the UK out of pure jealousy. Number 2 is it made me realize how big the world is. Now I know this sounds a bit stupid, but it's true. Because I'd only ever lived in the UK, I'd been to America, done a little bit of traveling and stuff before, and a few spots in Europe, but I'd never lived abroad before. And because you're in such a bubble in the UK, you don't really realize how big the world is and how much there is to see. For me, it's given me like a mad like travel bug since moving to Australia. I just want to see the next place, the next place, and the next place. I've got so many ideas of places I want to see, and it opens up your eyes, it expands your horizons to the fact that, you know, there's so much to see in the world out of the UK, and the idea of just spending years and years in the UK is pretty mad. Even if we move back to the UK one day, I still want to see so much in the world, and it definitely, it opened up my eyes to the fact that there's a lot more than the UK, and I think there's a lot that I want to see before I actually return. The next thing I learned is how much the good weather The good weather especially can have such a positive effect on everyone's lifestyle. I knew that the lifestyle in Australia was going to be a lot better. I knew that people, there's a beach culture, there's a culture for getting up at 6 a.m. and stuff, but it's not until you move to Australia when you realise how much of a big culture difference there is. A lot of people say the work-life balance in Australia is way better than the UK. I've spoken about this on videos before and I don't actually agree with that. I think you've got to work just as hard in Australia as you do in the UK. However, the difference is your time off in Australia is so much better. People prioritise so much more there. They prioritise their life, they prioritise their health. Everyone's into their healthy eating, running. You go down the beach in Australia, every guy's wham. You go down the beach in England, everyone's just like pale, fat old men. But in Australia, everyone's wham, they're massive, shredded. Do you know what I mean? Everyone looks so healthy, they've all got nice tans. And there's such a healthy culture. And it makes you realise how sort of depressing the culture is back in the UK, where the weather's shit for most of the year. All people do really is drink, go to the pub, that kind of thing. Obviously you know that when you're in the UK, but it's not, like I said, until you move to a new culture, a new country, where it really makes you realise, oh shit, like the UK culture is pretty depressing and boring. No, I'd rather live in a country where everyone's healthy and looks after themselves. The next thing I learned was how independent I can be. This, I believe, will be the case for everyone that moves abroad, but I guess it shocks me a little bit because I lived at home my whole life up until I was 21. I never went to uni. I never lived away from home. So moving to Australia, it was pretty mad, to be honest, because I didn't know how I was going to deal with certain things, because normally I'd have my mum around, my sisters, my friends, my dad, do you know what I mean? I'd have everyone around me to be able to help with problems, but moving abroad, I knew I was going to have to deal with all of that myself. I had my best mate there, which helped for sure at the start, but even then, there's only a certain amount your best mate can do for you. Do you know what I mean? It's like a lot of things you're gonna have to deal with independently, and it kind of it forced me into a situation where I really had to look after myself, which I think was so good. It almost shocks me to how independent I actually could be with a lot of things, and I think it's helped me massively, because even though I live with my girlfriend now and stuff, I can do pretty much everything on my own, I'm pretty sure. It's shown me how independent I can be. I did little bits of traveling myself. I went and did farm work myself at the start. Do you know what I mean? It showed me that I can be a lot more independent than I realised. And number 5, the last thing that I learned was, it became very clear to me what my values are and my priorities are in life. Back home, when you're in a bit of a bubble, I was living the same week, really. I was going to work, I was going to the pub on the weekends. How I've mentioned, I didn't really do that much else. I had a great friendship group, which I love seeing. But my life was pretty similar for the majority of the time. And I didn't almost know I didn't really get to express my interests and lots of things. When you move abroad, you're trying new things all the time. You're hiking, you're doing activities. I started social media, you try new things. You just get into the habit of trying new things and stuff, and you learn where your priorities are. And either this is me getting older, or I've kind of learned what I actually really like. But I prefer going for hikes. I like going out in nature. I like making videos. I enjoy being creative, which I never did in the UK because I was just going to the pub and repeating. Now I've always had creativity inside of me, but I've never really been able to use it. But now I do YouTube, TikTok, stuff like that. I'm able to finally use the creative side to me. But living in the UK, I've never got to express that. And obviously the drinking and stuff, I'm not as into that anymore. Don't get me wrong, if I see the boys, I definitely like to have a few beers, go to the beach, have a few beers, sit in nice bars and stuff, have a few drinks. But clubbing and stuff, I know I'm getting older, so probably that's why I don't like it. But I think if I'd been at home, I'd probably still be doing it. But moving abroad, I've realised now what I actually like and where my priorities are. And you guys will be the exact same for sure. If you move, you're going to really find out a lot about yourself. It's a cliche thing, you learn a lot about yourself when you're travelling, but you really do. Especially if you move abroad for multiple years like I have. So you're going to learn so much about yourself and what you really like. So there are some key points that I learned when I moved abroad. I learned so much about myself, about other people, about everywhere I went, but they were 5 points I could think of today. of things I learned, and also things which I'm pretty sure you lot will learn when you move abroad. So thank you for watching, subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and I will see you very soon with another video.